So the only exciting part of that is that I've been both a CIO as well as I am a board member. I'm on the board of ICBC, Insurance Corporation of British Columbia. Any of you know what that is? 2, 3. Okay, so in British Columbia, bless everyone's heart, car insurance is a right of every British Columbians. Don't go there. This is not my policy. I'm not here to represent or justify BC's policies, but it's a humongous organization administering it. So I have been on a number of different boards. I am on a number of different boards. I went through the Institute of Corporate Directors certification, so I'm now certifiable in addition to everything else. How many of you here are on a board? Okay, about half the people. How many of you here are CIOs or senior IT executives? About almost half. How many of you are both? Wow, not very many. So let me tell you why you should become a board member. I'll go with that later on. I have to switch to that or else I'll never finish. And Linda won't like that. So the role of the CIO has changed. You know, no longer is it okay to be a propeller head and just know the newest cool technology. I can, within 2 minutes of you appearing with your BlackBerry in front of me, I can tell you how good a user you are, probably in 90 seconds. But that's not what a CIO's role is. The CIO's role has changed. The CIOs are leaders. The CIOs are there to support and enable the organization and its goals with the technology. But now we have to go one step further. It's not just good enough to be a good CIO and a good leader. You now have to get along with the board. You know, in the past, you used to go through your boss who represented you at the board. But now more and more CIOs are part of the board or represent or participate in every board meeting. Why do you think that is? Why do you think the CIO has to be at the board level? Any ideas? She gets an extra dessert. IT is in every part of the organization. You know, we all try to measure the value of IT. I remember one of my staff saying, oh, would you stop making us do that? Just shut all the computers down for a day. And then people would appreciate what technology could do. That's not it. IT is in every part of the business. Name me one part that doesn't have any IT in it. So that's why CIOs need to be on the board or talk to the board. But this has become an issue. CIOs are terrified about going to the board. You know, one of the weirdest one, I heard one of my direct reports, I asked him to come and present to the board, and he looks at me and says, you know, I saw that board member 2 weeks ago getting gas. And I said, yeah, okay. He had to pay for it. And I said, okay. Well, he's just like us. Yeah, board members are just like us. They have to do exactly the same thing. The difference is that when you communicate with a board member, you have to do it in language they understand. So how do you do that? Well, I pretend I'm talking to my papa, who has many, many, many good qualities, but technology knowledge is not one of them. He memorizes everything. So you told me to push this button and then that button, you know, rather than logically looking at it. So you need to have someone in mind who is not as technology knowledgeable as you are. But the boards are constituted still in a way where there is a finance champion on the board, or a member or customer champion, but there's no IT champion on the board. The reason I was asked to join the ICBC board is because they are doing a very large technology project. Many CIOs really don't understand what the board is there for. So what is the board's role? Well, the board needs to understand the importance of IT. So keep this in mind. So when you do your first presentation to to the board is one of the things you're going to highlight. The second thing that the board is responsible for from a technology point of view is ensure that the board and the business and management are all involved. It is not an IT project. If you have an IT project, it should not go ahead. It is a business project that's enabled by IT. Do you hear people saying, this is, just an HR project or a marketing project? No. It's an HR project or marketing project. There's no such thing as a technology project. Even when you replace servers, it's there to meet business goals. And that it may be risk avoidance. And the third one is to oversee that IT risk is mitigated. A majority of the board members, without knowing anything more about IT, focus on the risk mitigation. The risk mitigation is really important when you talk to the board. What risk does this expose us to? How do you mitigate that risk? This is their focus. So how does the board look at technology? I wish I could tell you that since the 5 years I've been on board, this has been easier. It hasn't. The ways of bringing a better view of the board towards technology is show the relationship between business strategy and IT strategy. So what does IT do to enable the business? What the board is not interested in is technology details. They don't care if you have an iPad or a tablet. Well, they do if they can have one, but other than that, they don't care. They don't care whether half your staff uses BlackBerry and the others use some other device which we don't mention here today, because BlackBerry is the best. They don't care about how fast you replace servers. What they care about is what you are doing in order to enable the business. Again, the risk. Risk is a 4-letter word to the board. Remember that. It's really important whenever you talk about something, show how it mitigates the risk. And as somebody said today, there is a very good saying that says, what interests my boss fascinates the hell out of me. So what interests the board, I better be good at. So risk is a really important issue. How to improve financial performance, and what does technology do to assist that, and how it supports the business's strategic plan. You as a CIO or a senior IT person can bring a lot to the board. How many of you have presented to your board? Okay, so Michelle, can you just look at those people? Put your hand up. Those are the people you need next time at the conference, okay? After my talk, just go up to Michelle and give her your name. Because that's an experience that is really valuable, because you understand the direction of the organization once you talk to the board. You understand where they are coming from listening to the questions. So what you can bring to the board is how the technology plan supports business alignment. Again, we're back to the risk, the security and compliance, the business continuity, that if the computers do go down, what happens? What's your backup plan? How do you measure the value of technology? And it shouldn't be just the CIO by himself or herself. It should be together with the business. Just as I said, there are no IT projects. The value of IT should not just be measured by the CIO. And again, change and risk management. Every time a new system is implemented, whether you upgrade Word or whatever you're doing, it's a change management exercise. Yeah, there's technology bits and pieces too, but much bigger than that, it's a change management exercise. What I used to say to my staff, help the staff, is say, tomorrow take a different way to work. And then tell me how long it takes you to take that way to work without having to think about it, meaning until it's automatic. And now add to it that you get paid for this, and then answer the phone, because that's what our users are going through. What do you require to have a good board interaction? You need to have business skills. You have to express everything in business terms. And you have to have good interpersonal and communication skills. You also know how to influence the board. You have to get to know the board. You have to talk to them from their perspective. So if one of the board members is from a non-for-profit organization, you talk to them differently than one who is a large for-profit organization. Good strategies and great ideas don't always work. It's how you communicate it. And you have to find the right balance. I keep emphasizing risk, but you also have to show that you are making good decisions and how you make those decisions. So here I'm going to talk about 5 steps that could assist CIOs to prepare. You need to understand the board's role versus senior management role. So the board is going long-term and shareholder protection or member protection. Senior management is responsible for running the organization. As a board member, there's a saying, nose in, fingers out. I can sniff it, but I can't do anything about it. It is management who does. You need to understand that the board is there for long-term decisions, and management is the one who implements it. So the very first thing you do in your first presentation is, what is a CIO? And don't say its career is over. It's very cute, but you need to explain the real role of the CIO. And it's really a business executive specializing in IT. And I've been asked the question, and I showed this slide, should they have more IT knowledge or more business knowledge? Is a CIO better if he or she comes from the business, or better if he or she comes from IT? And it's like a zebra. Is the zebra black with white stripes, or white with black stripes? An ideal CIO, you should be able to talk in either language. And often CIOs are not just in charge of IT. For example, when I was at Vancity, I was also in charge of all facilities, about a good $60+ million worth. How many of you here have more than just one portfolio that you manage, more than just IT? So there are a number of them. So number of you. So you need to explain this to the board and show that you're more than just in charge of technology. Number 3 is really important. If one thing you want to remember, it is the bullet points under number 3. So the first thing you need to figure out is what kind of board you are facing. Is it an elected board, or is it an appointed board, or a political board? So on ICBC, it's an appointed board. I'm on the CGA Canada board, that's elected. There are political boards, because you will more understand how the board was put together. A political board is not so much looking for specific skill set to fit, but to make sure that they provide a direction. An elected board, you can see people from different parts of business, from different organizations, and they all have specific skills. Either they provide the legal or the financial, or sometimes the technology is part of it. So the next point is the technology comfort. How comfortable are they with technology? And many of us saw this when we provided iPads or a tablet to our board. And I have to tell you this. I'd say at least 1/3 of my interaction with our board, I was the CIO to the board and the help desk and their best buddy. And should they get another tablet just like that one? And what kind of handheld device should they get for their grandson, etc. So you have to be prepared to be there for them. You also need to know what's the focus of the board. Is the board in a cost-cutting mode, or is the board in a mergers and acquisition mode? It's very important to know that before you go in there with a presentation. How does the board work? Do you see the board members addressing the chair to ask a question of you? Or do they address you directly? And what is the decision-making process? Are the decisions made in committee and approved in the board, or are they approved at the board meeting? You need, point 4 there, you need to work with all of your peers. They all have to support you regardless of what happens in front of the board. You can't be a lone leader. You get all the arrows in your front if you don't collaborate with all of your peers who will be there to protect you. And it's really good because you need, in talking to your peers, you rehearse what you're going to say to the board. And your peers have presented to the board, and they would tell you what works and what doesn't. And number 5, acquire board experience. Don't say that you can't. There is a website that lists all volunteer board positions. If you don't have it, let me know and I'll send it to you. Find a board that you can serve on so that you gain the experience on how a board works. This is an example of how I talk to the board. Just like Alberta Treasurer Board, Man City had to replace their 35-year-old banking system. And I had to go to the board and say, could you please give us $65 million so we'll be at the same point as we are now, except with a more modern system. Instead of that, I had this slide here. That was my very first slide. I had 2 other slides with the cost. And it's a 1975 Oldsmobile. And it looks very nice. And it's actually beautiful. Fortunately, there is no more leaded gas, no seat belts, doesn't have the airbags, no mechanics, no standard things like you could open the trunk from inside the car. And I explained that's what our core banking system is like. In addition to that, with an antique car, you think of putting money away for when you have to replace it so you don't get hit at once. And we didn't kind of do that. We sort of hoped it would work. And I got approval. So here are some tips for board presentations. Make sure you provide a complete view rather than selective one, because they will ask questions and you lose credibility. And board presentations, by the way, rarely go over an hour. If it does go over an hour, you need to stop after about 45 minutes, review what you have just said, maybe even have a break and then continue. But usually the presentation itself is less than an hour, or the one I did there was 35 minutes. And then we discussed it. They asked questions and I answered it. Again, use business terms, watch your messaging style. Sometimes CIOs feel that the board doesn't quite know as much about technology as they do, and inadvertently talk down to the board. That's a showstopper. Provide transparency. If something didn't work, acknowledge it didn't work. And provide regular updates to the board so that they actually see you more often and know what's going on. So here are some recommendations that you can use as you go forward and do board presentations. Provide a relevant report to the board, meaning something that is of interest to them, or the board committee. So often the board has a committee for technology. Many times IT reports through the audit committee. How many of you have a technology committee of your board? Very few. There's 2 that I know of. Blue Cross has one, and so has ICBC. How many of you IT reports through the audit committee? Yeah, that's more more the style of going through the audit committee, which is really painful. I've done both. I've done actually 3 times. I reported to the board, to the audit committee, and to a special committee. The audit committee is really painful because the main thing they're interested in is the 4-letter word, risk. Everything has to be framed like that. One of the things I did, and you may want to do, is offer the board educational session. The board has so many sessions a year on education, on learning new things. And there are, what I did is, there are 2 people at Simon Fraser University, one who teaches the Institute of Corporate Directors course for IT, and the other one did a research paper and is on several boards on how IT should be present, or what the board needs to know about IT. The gentleman's name is Michael Parent, and the lady's name is Blaise Reich, R-E-I-C-H. If you need contact information, just come to me. I had them come in once a year and talk to the board about what was relevant. So when I proposed that project, I had one of them come in to talk about the risks involved with large projects, because we all need to know about it. I didn't want to hide anything. I wanted the transparency. You also identify where technology can be a strategic differentiator and not a big differentiator. One of the things I did is, remember when we had debit cards without chips? Well, you know, all these people who skim debit cards, they have an unlimited R&D budget. I don't. And there were hundreds of thousands of dollars skimmed through debit cards. And the major skimming is just before midnight and just after midnight, because the daily limit is reset. And you know, we had a meeting saying, "No, what can we do?" And people came up with all sorts of different stuff. And I said, "Hold on, we just changed the meaning of midnight. One night it's going to be 11, the other night it's going to be 12 midnight, the other night it's going to be 1, and it will dynamically assign it." And it cut down on skimming. And the board was interested in it because technology was used in a way that reduced risk. And of course, stay up to date with future business requirements, what products, what processes. Remember, I talked to you about, is the board in cost-cutting mode or merger and acquisition mode? Look at that and see how technology can enable that. Questions, discussions, things that worked for you, things that you want to share with the audience to see, you know, this worked for me, maybe you could use it as well. Anybody? Anybody who had a really good interaction with their boards, or any of the boards they were on that worked? Wow, no good interaction with the board. This is sad. Uh-oh, somebody, our microphone is just being turned on. Any comments? Any questions? There is a young lady in the back.
I just wanted to comment that one of the things that I've found makes the difference is all about honesty. And I think the more honest you are in that environment, and yes, language is important, but it is about honesty, facts on the table. You talk about risk. Let's not gloss over what the situation is. Let's be clear and transparent, and I think that's the other way to engage with the board.
Yes, that's a really good point. Transparency and honesty gains you credibility. And credibility is really important in something that they can't quite understand. Then they have the confidence in you that you will tell them what's good and what's bad. I thank you very much, and I am here for the rest of the day, so if you have any questions, please come and ask.